My play of the day from round 4 of Wijk aan Zee was the game between Levon Aronian and Vishy Anand. I'm sure that this game will find its way into many collections in the future and will go down in chess history. It was remarkable stuff. Let's take a look. The game only lasted 23 moves, but was so complicated. I'm going to cut to the chase and just zip through the first few moves. It was a Slav. Of course, Anand used this as his main opening against d4 in his World Championship match against Gelfand, so he's very well versed in this opening, and this is the so-called Moran variation. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to zip through these opening moves and get to the critical moment in the game. But I can assure you this has all been played before. This is all very well-known theory, actually. There are lots of different ways to play this position, but in playing a3, now we can begin to see the kind of strategy that Aronian wants to pursue here. The idea of a3 is actually to play b4, preventing black playing this move, this breaking move c5. If white can play b4 successfully, then this bishop will be completely dead and white will have achieved a great deal. Okay, let's see how Anand reacts against that. Both players up to this point playing very quickly indeed. Anand played rook c8, and well, let's see very quickly what happens if white plays b4. Here black, well, can actually play c5, and this was played by one of Anand's seconds, one of his helpers, in a game in London a few months ago. And it looks crazy to play c5 here, but actually black can get away with this. Now bishop f3, you can see that c5 unleashes the bishop, and now black sacrificed a piece, so black's a whole piece down here, but actually he's fine. The point is there are threats on the king side with bishop h2 and rook across and then bringing the queen in, so white has to play f4, and now black recovers the piece by pinning on the c-file and so on, and the game was drawn very shortly. Black has recovered the piece. Now that's a very important variation, otherwise b4 would be terribly strong if black were prevented from playing c5 because the bishop is so badly placed on b7. Okay, so well, Aronian knew that and instead went for knight g5. He played that very quickly actually, and I think he was hoping that Anand would now take on h2 and win the knight back. So black is a pawn up, but actually white has fantastic compensation here for the pawn. You get in b4, crucially preventing c5. This bishop is really poor, and white has two bishops and a mobile pawn centre. Fantastic compensation for a pawn. But instead Anand had prepared something. Oh, by the way, I should also say that after knight g5, if black were to play h6, preventing the pawn being taken, then the knight just comes back to e4, and strategically this is fantastic. So for example, okay, the bishop retreats, and again b4. White has a tremendous position because c5 has been prevented. But Anand had prepared this and very quickly played c5. Okay, strategically this is the move we want to play. Of course, it unleashes the bishop on b7. So now there are two bishops raking across the board. But there's a problem with this move, of course, namely that the pawn can be taken on h7. So what was Anand's idea? Well, quite quickly he played knight g4. This was obviously his home preparation, and well, this is such a shocker, and Aronian didn't manage to deal with the move very well. Okay, there's a threat to take on h2. So that means that the rook can't be taken because it'll just be mate. But what about h3? Well, I mean, there are several ways for black to continue here. After the game, Anand said that he thought the bishop h2 was best, followed by queen h4. Okay, the threat is to play queen h3, again using this bishop as a pin, and black breaks through. And if, for example, f3, then the bishop comes back and black plays queen g3 with a superb attack. So maybe d5 is possible, but okay, this pawn is kind of pinned because it would unleash the bishop. And yeah, black, well, Anand seemed to think this should be good for black, or very good compensation, a good attack. But there are other ways to play the position. Somehow this knight is just looking stranded on h7. Okay, so understandably, Aronian decided after knight g4 to play f4, blocking out the bishop. Okay, well, this looks very sensible, and you'd think, well, where's black's attack? In fact, with f4, this diagonal is weakened, as we see so often when f4 is played in lots of different openings, lots of different positions. But, well, how do we exploit that? Well, let's see what Anand played. First of all, he took on d4, and then found a remarkable move, bishop c5. Now, he said after the game that, you know, in his preparation for his World Championship match against Gelfand, they'd analysed this variation, but at the board he couldn't remember the details at all, but it gave him great confidence to know that the position should be okay for black. Not definitely winning, but, you know, gives very good practical chances, and, well, even from a theoretical point of view, should be, well, fully playable for black. Okay, what's the point of bishop c5? Very odd looking move. Well, if pawn takes bishop, then knight c5. Now black is a piece down here, but this is threatened, and of course the bishop is still raking across the board, and watch out for this diagonal. So for example, if bishop takes b5, the bishop was threatened, then queen d4 and knight e4, and we've seen this kind of position before. Knight f2 is threatened, and, well, this is devastating. There's no defense. Look at white's queen side. There's no development. This is the problem, that white is facing a really deadly attack but can't bring the pieces over. What else is there? Well, bishop e2 instead, bringing the bishop this way. Well, again, queen d4 check and knight f2, and, well, we've all seen this checkmate before, this classic smothered checkmate, queen g1. Some people call it Philidor's mate. Or if rook takes f2, queen takes, and it's going to be mate on g2. What else do we have? Well, yeah, it's pretty nasty. If knight g5, then we take on d4, and black isn't even material down here, but has wonderfully active pieces, and this looks very good for black. So Aronian played bishop e2. In fact, after the game, Anand thought that white was already lost in this position. And Vishy originally thought that, well, he could play bishop d4 check here, but when he started looking at the position, he began to realise this was an even stronger move. Again, a remarkable move. The point is that sometimes black is still going to play bishop takes d4, but sometimes it's important for the queen to come here. So this just gives black flexibility. The knight can't be taken, for example, here, and again we have this checkmate and knight f2. And, well, if pawn takes bishop, again queen d4 and knight f2 is winning. So Aronian had to play bishop takes knight. Now bishop takes and knight takes bishop. And, well, Aronian really has nothing better than to take the rook. Now this is a key moment, and Anand was very proud of his next move. He played f5, Now, why did he play f5? Why didn't he play queen h4 straight away? It looks deadly. To threaten mate, h3 can't be played. It's queen h3 anyway. Take a look at that bishop, the pin. But after queen h4, white has a saving move. This exchanges queens, and white reaches an endgame, the exchange up. But f5 blocks the queen. So for the moment, white is a whole rook up, but there is absolutely no defense. So for example, if knight takes e6, queen h4, no defense to queen takes h2. Obviously g3 is impossible because the pawn is pinned. You can see the power of these bishops. That's really the key theme in this game, the fact that these bishops have control over these diagonals, and really you can see that f4 is responsible for that. You can't close the diagonal with f3, and yeah, it's fatal. So instead of knight takes e6 after f5, Aronian tried knight g6, preventing queen h4, but simple move, queen f6, just threatening queen takes knight, and it's over. If knight e5, then knight h2 wins. So king takes knight, queen h4 is mate, and if the knight comes back, well, you can just play knight g4, and queen h6 is going to be mate shortly. h3 was played, queen takes knight. If pawn takes, then queen h6 is mate. Aronian tried queen e2, now queen h5, threatens mate again. And now really the only move to keep white in the game is rook f3. And Anand said that he saw this endgame and thought it should be winning for black. White still hasn't developed properly, and well, if the rook is allowed in, then the king is in terrible trouble. So black isn't any material up, but his pieces are so actively placed, and his pawns are together and compact. Black must be winning. Instead, Aronian played queen d3, which allowed a very neat finish. Bishop e3, so it blocks the defense to h3, and if bishop e3, then it's mate straight away. Well, a superb game, and really worthy of a world champion, I think. Anand looked absolutely delighted after the game, particularly as he said, Aronian for him is something of a bête noire, an Angstgegner for him. He's had difficult results against him in the past. Anand also mentioned that this was, of course, had echoes of a classic game from chess history, namely Rotlevi against Rubinstein, against Rubinstein. Let me just show you the end of that game very quickly, just so you can compare and contrast. So here we are. Let me leap ahead to this position. Well, you can see we have the same bishops raking across the board, just radiating power, and white has also advanced well, the f-pawn, and well, we can see that there's no stopping these pieces. So okay, white's king is in check, king h1, and now knight g4. Again, very similar indeed. So if queen takes knight, then rook takes d3 is pretty nasty, threatening c3, and also rook here. So white played bishop e4, queen h4, again very similar, threatening mate. g3 played, and now the brilliancy, rook takes knight. If bishop takes rook, then we take on e4 and queen h2 mate. And if pawn takes queen, but this was the game. And now rook d2. This is just to deflect the queen from defending the bishop. So that's, well, there are many variations, but let's see the game. Takes, and now the winning move for black, rook h3, and after this white resigned. Obviously it can't be taken because of as the pin, and if queen takes bishop, rook h2 is mate. So you can see the similarities between this classic game of Rubinstein's and Anand's game today. There we go. So there are now 3 players sharing the lead after 4 rounds. Anand, Carlsen, who defeated Hari Krishna, and Karyakin, who clung on to draw against Nakamura. So they're all on 3 out of 4. There's a rest day tomorrow, but they resume on Thursday for round 5, where we'll see Anand playing Carlsen. Should be good. Thanks for watching.